Hi, this is Kim Edwards, and we are going to be having a look at some materials inside of Maya using mental ray. So this is the scene. You can see there's a area light in there, and I'm just putting some low quality settings, just using the preset on, and that's what our render looks like. We'll turn the area light off in a minute. It's be a bit slow. And we're just setting up two views here, so that we've got the hyper shade panel in our left view, and I like to set up just plain Lambert materials to test any textures before I apply them to my final material. So I'm just setting up a test Lambert material for the eggs, and as you can see, eggs have got a slight amount of bump to them. It's kind of a combination of little dimples as well as kind of craquelicure sort of things. So I've got a leather normal map here that I'm going to use. So we'll just drag that from Explorer into the Hypershade, and now we're going to create a bump 2D node. So if you just drag it across to the bump slot, it automatically makes one. And as you can see, I've got color management on, so I'm going from SRG to linear space. So what we need to do is flag under the color profile here that this is linear, so it doesn't get converted, because that will ruin the normal map. Just changing it to tangent space normals from bump because it's a normal map, and now we can see it clearly in our viewport. Turn the lighting off. Now to tone this down, I can't really use the bump depth because it's a normal map, so we'll set something up to do that. First I'll just tile it. So just every file texture node has got a place 2D node attached to it that you can click to. And now I'm just going to right click and create a blend color node. So I'm going to set these colors up to be the same as the Z color in a normal map, which is basically half of red, half of green, and full blue. And that, if we use this blend color node, will allow us to basically soften the strength of the normal map by just blending in just the do nothing blue color on the Z. And just using the connection editor there, using middle mouse to drag nodes in the hypershade and make the connection editor pop up. There is a node editor now that you can use. I still prefer to find the hypershade quicker. And here you can see I just preview the effect of toning down the blender, so blending between the normal map blue and our actual normal map, so the blue color that we created before. And that's just going to make it a little bit more subtle. So the red and green channels do X and Y axes, and the blue channel in the normal map does straight out from the face, perpendicular from the face. So now I'm going to set up a ramp so that we can get a little bit of variation in the egg color. And ramp's basically Maya speak for a gradient or lots of compositing programs. And I've just dragged that onto the color attribute, and you can see it's a ramp on the V axis, and just doing it with blue and red just so it's really clear it's going to go on. So we're going to essentially just get a good idea of where I'm going to have darker parts of the egg and lighter parts of the egg. There's a different fall off that you can choose depending on what you're doing. At the moment it's set to linear. I'm just going to bring in, I put in a color swatches just as a reference kind of palette if you want to use that, just bringing that in as an image plane, and just do some color picking just for the eyedropper. And your last colour is a little swatch in your colour picker once you've chosen it. So you can see that now we can clearly see in our viewport what we're doing with this ramp. We're going to have darker on the ends of the egg and lighter on the towards the rim. And I'm just going to fiddle with the colours a little bit. Just the saturation. So just trying to get a little bit of variation in the egg without actually painting a texture. So the other thing to note is in Maya, in the 2015 non-bonus extension version, the color pickers aren't color swatches aren't color managed, so we'll have to fix them in a second. I made this little noise texture for the speckles, because some eggs have got speckles, which I'm just loading in and just playing with the Place 2D node just to tile it correctly. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use another utility, another blend color node, to basically use that black and white texture as a mask. So you need to click on the speckle and make sure alpha is set to luminance, and now we can just drag the alpha into the blender attribute of the blend colors nodes. So I'm just doing out on one color channel, and I'll read the alpha that way and put that into the out alpha into the blender attribute of the blend color node. And we'll have a look. So now we've got our color, plain egg color, and then kind of browny color for the speckles. We could do this in Photoshop, but this kind of gives us some more playing options. So now, just going to make another blender, and we're going to mix the ramp that we did before and the speckles together. And occasionally when I'm dragging middle mouse, I kind of mishit. I think this is okay. And this, there we go, that's better. So now I've got, just with one speckle texture and some ramps, got some variation. I'll just spin it around so I can see this a bit better. Now, here you can see that the actual colours in the render don't marry with the swatches, and this is why having colour management for the swatches would be awesome. Just tone down the bumps. Just going to tile it some more as well. Up close it's too strong. So it's tedious, but there is a gamma correct utility that we can use to fix up our colour choices for linear colour space that we're working in. Just some quick tidying up. Put another directional line in so we can see things a little bit more clearly. Beautiful. So you can see here, I'm kind of identifying the color issue. So now we will fix that. I'll just save a comparison image. We're going to create a color utilities gamma correct. If we just set that to 0.55, 0.455, 0.455, I'll make 2 copies of that, and just connect them into our network. You can see it's now overly dark in the viewport, but in our render it should actually look like what we intended when we originally picked it. So that's all ready to go in our just plain Jane Lambert. Now we can have a look at setting up a more sophisticated material. So NVIDIA and Mental Ray have made some new materials to, I suppose, eventually replace the architectural materials, and these are layered shaders, and it's kind of a one layer on top of a layer on top of another layer approach, which is quite intuitive and optimized for whole sorts of things. So I've just chosen from the whole range of bases a scatter as a base, and with subsurface scattering, one main attribute is just to get the scale right. Now these are better than the normal subsurface scattering shaders because they don't need to write to an external light map, so they're actually quite a bit faster. And we can see here in just one of the reference images for this, the kind of sort of translucency or scattering that we get on the egg, which is helping us reproduce that. So on the top of that, I'm going to have a little bit of specularity. So I just clicked on add another layer, just glossy reflection, don't need much, and that leaves some energy for the diffuse scatter underneath. So having done that, we can now connect our pre-tested nodes that we made for Lambert in a minute. Getting our general scattering colours generally right first. Alright, so we'll connect our other elements in now. So let's have a look. Just going to drag our colour one that we created before in to the colour attribute. I can see it coming into play now, and there's a different feel, subtle, but there's a different feel already to the way it's reacting with the lights. And now what we need to do is drag it onto there's that comparison there. Now if you scrub down, there's an overall bump attribute in which we can drag our bump 2D node into. It doesn't accept straight files, it won't automatically create a bump 2D node if you drag a file onto it. So you need to drag a bump 2D node onto it. And we can see it coming into effect there. And let's now move on and have a look at setting up our next object. So we were going to start straight away for this one into another Miller material, and this one's going to be for the liquid. Now there's quite a few different bases that you can choose from for refractive, kind of glassy, transparent things. I'm using this distance one, which means it's going to get darker over the distance of the volume. Initially, just have a look. And so as I tone or alter the distance attribute, the deeper it goes, the darker the colour is going to get. So I've put a colour in there, and As you can see, when I tone down the distance value, it's kind of like an accumulation of colour, as if it's going through a solid, liquid or glassy volume. Now I've just created an image-based lighting node. I'm not going to turn final gathering on, but if we're going to play with reflections, we need something to reflect in. So here's a light probe that we're going to bring in. So I'm going to load that one in. And we need to change the mapping type from spherical, which it'll default to angular, because it's a light probe. Now I'm just turning primary visibility off, so it won't be visible in the render. It's still visible in the viewport. And I'm not turning final gathering on because we're just going to use this to have a look at our reflections. I do have that area light there that's visible to reflections, but kind of need something. You can see I'm getting a little speck, little white hot spots in the render, low quality settings. So just tweaking this distance bit, and then I think we'll throw on the top some more reflection. Just need a little bit more quality to have a look at this. Make sure it's looking okay. Great. Alright, so we're going to add another weighted layer, and it's just got a weight attribute, and we're just putting glossy reflection in. And at the moment the weighting of the glossy reflection is at 1, so that's all we're going to see is the reflection. Just going to tone down the roughness because this is going to be more like a clear coat kind of effect. I want to give it a sense of it being a fluid, and then I'll tone down the weight to let our base component shine through. So this is, I'm using the transmissive distance just to kind of give a sense of it being gloopy stuff. I know that egg yolk is white, but not yolk, egg white is white. Great, so now that's done, we're going to use another miller, and this time we're going to do the yolk. So let's transmit it with distance on, so I'm going to jump over to scattering, and just going to colour pick some colours and then tone down the scale conversion. So I just want to get a little bit of colour variance with this, but what's really going to sell it again is going to be the kind of clear coat, sort of oozy gooey speck layer over the top. I'm just trying to give a milky base to it first of all. So people are quite picky in spotting what they think is a good coloured yolk, so I'm going to play around with this colour for quite a bit before I get it right. Cool, so now we'll just chuck another layer on top. So just diffuse transmission. work out. So we're going to put glossy transmission on. So this gives us a few more variables to muck around with. But nope. So the good thing about these layered materials is they're so versatile. You can quickly experiment and get a whole lot of different shader effects. So here, just trying a Fresnel kind of fall off to get a bit of red kind of around the rim of the yolk. So there's weighted Fresnel, and then there's a custom kind of I think grazing angle attribute that you can also play with. I'm still getting my head around using the Miller materials, so it's still quite new. So just playing around with some of these attributes. So this one's going to now have a weighted layer over the top. Which is just pure glossy reflection. You can see it immediately starts to look like mercury. And we'll just tone down the weight. And boom. Suddenly feels very wet and gloopy. Just going to tone down that Fresnel colour a little bit from red to an orange. Cool. So that's our yolk done. And we'll just up our res a little bit and have another quick squeeze. Fortunately, you don't have to wait for the render times because I'm pausing normally. So that looks okay. I think the white looks a little bit too mercurial. That should fix that. Beautiful. Alright, so then the next thing we'll do is we'll have a look at doing the pasta. Now the pasta I've actually made in a separate file and reference those in. So we'll save that and open up the pasta. For you guys, it'll be the pasta start file. And there it is there. And we will assign a hypershade. Pasta is, we're going for a dried pasta here, so I'll probably need to have a kind of translucent effect with it as well. So, a bit addicted to the scattering at the moment for these type of materials. Let's bring in my color reference. This is an image plane. And again, I'm just going to start with the tester material. You can see we've got UVs. And I'm just going to use a ramp plugged into a Lambert to get the classic little bumps. So just going from black one end, black to the other, white in the middle, and then I'm going to change the interpolation to bump, which is kind of optimized for tonal bump mapping. And there you can go. Just tiled it 60 times on the V axis, and that's going to give us our little ribs in our dried pasta. So it's good to be able to see it first, and now we will plug that into our actual material, which is going to be a Miller. Excellent. bring up my normal tabs. There we go. Alright, so there's our ramp. Make a bump 2D node. Connect it into the bump value. Just turning down the depth, and I'll plug that into the overall bump of the miller. Just by dragging and dropping. Have a quick look. Great. And now we'll play around the actual material attributes. I'm going to first off start with a scatter layer, adjust the colours a little bit. Adjust our scale conversion. You can see they soften bump and shadows as well. Okay, and then another weighted layer, we can add diffuse transmission. It's going to give us another kind of translucent sort of element to it. And I'm just going to mix between the two. Going for the dried pasta kind of vibe. Cool, and just a little bit of reflection. If you have a look at reference, they are, the hard ones are got a certain degree of reflectivity, fairly rough reflectivity. And that's pretty good, so we'll apply that to the whole thing. Save that out, and that'll be something we can now reference or refresh back in our other scene. Alright, so if we go to File, Reference Editor, just going to unload that reference and we'll replace it. Sorry, unload, and then we're going to replace it. Just make sure the material we made has been applied. So I've set the references not to have kind of locked materials when I put this in. And there we go. And they've been instanced, these references. And now we'll just have a look at the overall rendering of this. So the directional light that we threw in there was just for speed. We're going to get rid of it now. Got the area light, which I'm going to turn off just so we can focus in on final gathering first of all. So turning final gathering on, and that's the lighting that we're getting. And I've got actually the interpolation quite high in the final gathering. So I've put this area light in to help with some of the noise that I'm going to get from final gathering. I'm just going to offset the final gather effects and the reflection values just by changing the color gain attributes from 1 to 2. Just a bit more light thrown into the scene. You can see that clearly, but there's quite a bit of noise that we're going to be getting from the final gather. So if you have a look here, I've got accuracy set to 50 and point interpolation at 100. So if I'm going to drop that down now, you'll see what the result would be. It's faster, but we get all this unwanted noise. If I turn the area light on, that's going to help significantly with that, but I need to also up my interpolation. Now there is in the image-based lighting node a new feature that they've brought in. It's kind of like a sky dome that you have in, other programs. But it is slow. It's kind of a brute force sort of solution. So that's pretty much it. So have a play around, and I hope that was a good introduction to materials, the Miller materials for you.